Okay, part two and the final completion of changing a fixed stock to an adjustable one. Picking up where we left off on the last one. Right now, I'm just gonna pin. I'm drilling some holes to pin those guide rods, just to give it, guess, just to make it stronger. I guess I don't think it's necessary. I mean, there's a back plate on there, but here's where I made my next mistake. You can see there, I thought that I just drill right through, the wood and that stainless tubing. But as you can see, that I forgot that tubing is really really strong. I had to change to a carbide bit just to start the hole. So the first hole I drilled, it just hit the tubing and immediately started walking. And high speed steel bit kind of didn't have much chance going through that tubing there. So for the second one, I drilled through the wood, put a mark on the tube, and then took out the tube and drilled the tube separate. So that was the next mistake. I mean, it's not huge, but now in the finished project, you kind of can see where I lost a little bit of wood on next to one of those. Anyway, once we got those holes drilled out, I was going to peg it with a 10-32 set screw, so we drilled it out. And I wanted to make sure this bond was strong, so I actually weighed it out, the epoxy, mixed it with some dye, put the tubes back in and put some bolts in to keep it in place, then set it up in the gun stock to make sure everything stays aligned. And it's 5-minute epoxy, so after a couple minutes, you can pretty much take it down. While I was waiting for that, I figured I'd work on that rubber back plate. So just a piece of rubber. Actually, it's just from some construction, I guess, rubber left on the side of the road. But I cut a piece off and then took it to the joiner and made it flat. That reciprocating saw didn't cut a nice cut. So once I got it to about the thickness I wanted, I took it to the belt sander and then contoured it at a slight angle so that when it's in place, it angles kind of in towards the body a bit. It's not exactly flat or the same dimensions, the same thickness all the way through. Right there you can see that the hole closest to you is kind of wobbled out. That was from the mistake I made earlier at the drill press. But once that's all set, I drilled it out, retapped it, and filled it. Oh, I placed these set screws in there, and I filled the hole with the epoxy. After that, it was just a matter of making a plate, a base plate for that rubber. Took some scrap aluminum, and we roughed out a cut. Nothing special, just cutting along the line on a bandsaw. So I got that set. Have to figure out how we're going to attach it. It's going to be 2 screws, so I kind of marked the center-ish and then drilled two holes through the aluminum. Transferred those marks. Pre-drilled, because if you put a screw in this piece, for sure it's going to split. And got it all set. Now it's just a matter of matching the aluminum plate to the wood. So just use the file for this. Seemed probably the fastest. Didn't take very long. I mean, I gotta speed it up like 20 times, but this is pretty much the whole thing. Once we got it really close, I mean, I knew I'm gonna go up to the bands. I mean, the belt sander later, so we just gotta get it really close with the file. Everything seems to fit okay. Looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. So here's that piece of rubber I cut off. We just gotta attach that there and cut off the excess next. trying to figure out how I'm gonna attach it and kind of transfer all the holes. I thought, well, I should trace it out and we can cut out that rubber, but then it might not match very good. So basically this is what I decided here. You take some gun oil, put it on the back of the screw heads, and hopefully it'll transfer to the rubber. So we just flip it upside down. Yeah, I didn't need to press on it, but and we got 2 marks. Just checking if the circles are symmetrical. Seem to be good. So took it to the drill press, drilled 2 holes through the center of those marks. I got a couple of bolts and attached the plate to the rubber. And pretty much this is where I make my next mistake. This is off camera. I took it to the bandsaw and just, cut along the aluminum plate. That pretty much was the next mistake. It's fine for the top, but the bottom angles down, so you can't cut exactly according to that aluminum plate. You have to follow the angle of the buttstock. So there was the next mistake anyway. I still didn't notice it though. So right here, I scuffed up the aluminum plate so that the epoxy would stick. And another mistake there, I didn't rough up the rubber. I should have roughed up the rubber also. Anyway, lessons learned. So overnight, that's the last thing I did was glue it and went to sleep. And I was going to paint it black, but I grabbed my spray can and it was missing the cap. So no black. I had some red sitting right there, so I just sprayed it red. I didn't think it mattered. This is on the inside. So 1 more coat, and that should do. 2 coats. It's on the inside. It's not that important. So here I am with my belt sander, and I'm gonna sand down the rest of the rubber and part of the wood, that wood block. Get everything nice and even. This is pretty much where I figured out that I made the mistake the other day. When you're sanding, you can sand the sides flush. That's not a problem. That's the easy part. But as you go around the top and the bottom, you have to either lift it or drop it to keep the angle the same. And this is where I figured out that on the bottom section, the rubber is just a tad bit light. I know this piece is larger than the stock because we removed that small section, so I didn't sand it completely flush with the angle, but I sanded some of the block down to kind of split the difference of the mistake. It's not that bad unless you look really close, but the bottom should be angled out a little bit, and it's only angled out a real little bit. So you can kind of see it right there. The bottom kind of looks like it goes straight. I angled it slightly, but not enough to match the rest of the rifle. Anyway, you can't do much about it now, so. And plus, that's why I make these videos, so you can see the mistakes I make. Everything looks good. I got it slightly sanded down, so I think I sanded it with 220, I think. I should have gone with 320, but I had 220 lying around, so I sanded it down and took out the lacquer. It's a small touch-up job, so just use the airbrush. Kind of prefer using the airbrush if possible. Just seems like it puts down better paint. I think I put about 4 coats on. kind of blend it into the rest of the gun, because the rest of the gun probably has about 4 coats on there, so not very much. It's very thin. It's not meant to be super glossy or anything, so after it dried for the day, this is at night now. I'm just checking out how that lacquer turned out. Looks pretty good. I was gonna debate at that time if I wanted to put down some more coats and kind of feather it into the rest of the gun, but it seemed to look okay. So we reattached the rubber plate, put everything together just to see how the overall look would be. That right there is some automotive detailing clay. Just gonna knock down some of the overspray, kind of blend everything in. That right there is some 1200 grit sandpaper. Just gonna wet sand just a little bit with the 1200. And that's all I did. It was very little. And this is some Menzerna 1200 polishing compound, 1200 grit polishing compound. I think I buffed it more than I sanded, so once everything was done, we're just gonna feather it into the rest of the gun. And everything looks good, except the rear seems a bit more polished than the rest of the gun. So we'll put everything back together and see how the overall looks or feels. That's pretty much how it's gonna look. Just checking what my adjustability is. So I noticed that it's stuck a little bit as you push it all the way in. So I'm thinking maybe some debris got in there. I'm not sure, but just put a little sandpaper, went and cleaned it all out, blew it out with the compressed air. Gonna check our overall. So we got up to about 15 inches or so. Just checking where it should be for me. So this is pretty much it. I mean, that's what it looks like there. Yeah, you can see the red in there. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Of course, it would be better black, but the red kind of sort of matches. It's not really bad. But here I set the rifle up for me, so that's where it's going to stay all the time. It's about 13 3/4 inches. I basically only moved it in like a 1/4 inch, but that's where it fits perfect for me. Doesn't look completely natural, but originally it wasn't designed. I mean, this is a modification after it was done. So originally it was like that. We got a 14-inch pull. And we took out that piece right there in the middle with the holes in them. And this is where it sits now. So it moved in about a 1/4 inch. That's what it looks like at maximum length, about 15 1/4, 15 1/2, somewhere around there. And this is what it looks like all the way closed, right about 13 inches. And back to where it's going to stay. If you made it this far, thanks. I'm not sure what I'm going to work on next, but this should conclude this project.